in this world of wonder. Circle where we all belong. Voice of 1,000 tribes. Tunza. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong.
Pulse of the human heart. Tunza. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong.
Circle where we all are free. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong.
Where we all belong. Where we all belong.
Hello everyone. Having just watched the opening to our show, you've had a glimpse of the Earth Charter's principles and values. But you're probably still wondering, what the heck is this anyway? Well, it's an amazing document. It's an international declaration of interdependence that was written by thousands and thousands of people all around the globe over the course of 10 years. It was launched at the Hague Peace Palace in the Netherlands in June 2000. Today we are beginning a series of TV shows called Earth Charter Living. And the purpose of our shows is to both enlighten you and entertain you so that you will join us in making the Earth Charter real. That's our ulterior purpose, to get you involved in this. But we want to show you too that changing the world can be fun. Oh, I see you rolling your eyes. I want you to know, you can roll them all you want, but we're going to show you over the course of 13 weeks that this is fun and meaningful. And just to prove my point, we are starting today with our first show, drinking. What else? I mean, what would you do with your first show? Sustainable martinis and wine, not sustained drinking, sustainable martinis and wine. And the purpose of this show is 2 points. First, to have you know that when you connect with other people and you want to make it more enjoyable, they'll join you. So connecting over your favorite beverage is a good way to start. And my favorite, of course, is martinis and wine. Secondly, if you also are connecting with people and you enjoy doing something, you stay involved. So we also want to show you, though, as a consumer, we are so heavy into consumerism in this country that by making the right choices, you can also make the Earth Charter real. Today's show is reflecting 2 sub-principles of the Earth Charter. The first one is managing our renewable resources to protect the health of our ecosystems. That's 5E. 5F, to maintain a quality of life that will sustain us into the future. So, I'm in front of Mise en Place restaurant on the edge of downtown Tampa, and I'm going to be going inside to slog down a martini, and I would like you to join us and meet Dave Madeira, our favorite bartender. Hey Dave, how are you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
All right. Tell me a little bit. What is your position here at Mise en Place?
I'm the bar manager here.
And how long have you been a bartender?
I've been bartending for about 8 years.
And how long you've been making martinis?
Really, for only about the past year since I started working here. It's kind of the thing to do around here, I guess you'd say.
Well, tell me a little bit about how martinis became the thing to do.
I think it had a lot to do with that the show Sex and the City. A lot of people watch that show. It's also obviously very popular. Everybody on the show drinks martinis, makes it a very fashionable thing to do, I guess you would say. And you just look kind of pristine when you're drinking a martini.
So, am I being a trendsetter here today?
Yes, you would be.
Hey, all right. All right. You know, I was here and you mixed an Earth Charter martini for me. Can you tell me why you called it an Earth Charter martini?
Well, it's really neat because the whole process of making it is organic. From the grain that's used to make the vodka is organic, to the yeast during the fermentation process is organic also. Mm-hmm. There's also 3 processes for the distillery. The first process is where the weakest part of the vodka comes from. Mm-hmm. And then there's a second process where the purest form, it's the smoothest, it's very, very, very smooth vodka part. And then the third process where it's that harsh flavor, that very bitter flavor you get from drinking vodka.
I've had those.
Yeah, they're not very good. What's cool about this particular martini is that the vodka we use is the second process, the purest form is what we use. They take that and they distill it 3 more times.
Wow.
And then after that, at the final distillation, they filter it through limestone. So it's very, very, very clean.
So very, very, very smooth.
Correct.
I understand also it's been made from rainwater.
That's correct.
And is this natural rainwater or acid rainwater? I mean...
Well, we just stick a bucket outside and then collect what we can during the rains, and then we use that. So.
But you're drinking a martini, so how do you know?
Yeah, you're not going to know after a while.
Who cares, actually?
Exactly.
So why don't you show us how you make a grade A martini?
Okay. First, grab the glass. Make sure the glass is chilled. I take the vermouth and I pour it around the glass. A lot of people like their martinis dry, so what I do is I swirl it around the glass, and then I dump it out.
All right.
So it gets a little bit of the vermouth flavor, but not much.
I like that idea.
Then we take the vodka.
Oh, I like that flash.
It's about all I do around here. only flash I know how to do. Grab the glass.
So tell me what the difference here is between a shaken and a stirred martini.
The shaken martini actually breaks up the ice, puts ice crystals into the martini, which actually will keep it colder for longer.
Very good.
When you stir it, you're actually just chilling it, and it won't be as cold for as long, and it actually, what we say, doesn't bruise the vodka. So it's actually more pure, but most people drink it shaken.
Looks good.
Jan, you prefer twist or olives?
Twists, please.
Twist. There you go.
Nicely done, Dave. Very smooth. Really smooth. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to be joining Marianne, the co-proprietor of this restaurant, and we're going to be learning about sustainable vineyards. I'd like you all to meet Marianne Ferentz. She is the co-proprietor of Mise en Place Restaurant. She is also a business person extraordinaire, a caretaker extraordinaire, and an Earth Charter volunteer extraordinaire.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
As well as a vinophile. And so I'm asking Marianne today about wines because she takes such care of wines in this restaurant. And the first place I want to start is asking her to define the differences between organic wines, sustainable wines, and sustainable farming. Because part of this show is to teach you as a consumer what you need to know when you walk into a restaurant or you walk into a business and you want to buy wine. Marianne.
Well, thank you, Jan.
You're very welcome. Tell me a little bit about the differences between sustainable, organic, and sustainable farming.
Well, there is some very major differences, and there are some wineries in California and Oregon that are doing a good job with organic wines and also with sustainable wines. The biggest difference is that there is also such a thing as organic wines and organic wineries. And organic wines, very often you will hear people talk about the sulfites in wines. And there is a certain percentage of sulfites that are allowed by law in order for a wine to be labeled organic. And there are many winemakers who think that that's not what it's all about, and I happen to agree with those winemakers. And so you'll see some wines that have been organically grown. Their vineyard may be organic and the vineyard may even be sustainable, but the wine may not be labeled an organic wine because it may exceed the level of sulfites that a wine is allowed to have by law. Very often people think that that negative feeling that they may have the day after is about the level of sulfites in the wine. I think it's probably more about how much wine you've consumed the night before, but also about how that wine was grown. And I think that that's really what makes the difference. So I think that we need to support those wineries that are going beyond the label of organic wine, but truly being an organic winery or a sustainable farm. And that's the even bigger picture, is sustainable farming.
Right, because one of the things that I've been told by my nutritionist, who we will meet later, is that it isn't about so much the sulfites, but about the pesticides that goes into wine that creates the headaches. And so I'd like you to talk at that first level about organic wines and sustainable wines.
Okay, organic wines, are very much about the pesticides, okay, and the level of pesticides that are used, as well as the type of pesticides that are used. And an organic farm is obviously moving in the right direction. But then there's that movement to sustainable farming, and even a deeper level movement to biodynamic agriculture, which is a true sustainable farming. And that is about making a farm that supports the earth and therefore supports the vine. You're talking about a winery, a farm that is all about what is in balance with nature. You're talking about, as opposed to trying to solve the problems of the vineyard with any kind of pesticide or any kind of chemical being added, you're trying to solve it in some sort of natural fashion. And so you're going to see a vineyard that is much more alive than the vineyards that are done with a completely different kind of farming, which became popular in the 70s. And it's really market-driven versus earth-driven.
Right.
Because the market really drove a quick production sort of method, that we need to turn around wine and we need to turn it around consistently. We want it to taste the same way, and we want to predict how it's going to grow, when it's going to be harvested, etc. Where sustainable farming is really about letting the land determine those things and bringing the land back to the most natural state. When you see someone try to take a vineyard and bring it back to its sustainable farming existence, you're talking about not only are they the soil that immediately surrounds the vineyards, but you're talking about them looking at their entire plot of land and saying, what kind of trees used to surround this land that kept this piece of land in balance with nature? What kind of other plants were on this land? Because what happens then is you get the birds and the insects that sustain that property and ultimately allow those grapes to grow into their greatest capacity and making the best wine possible. So what you're trying to put back are the birds and the bees of nature. You're trying to put those insects and those animals, from gophers on down to little microorganisms, back to the land that make a natural state
So it's
of
a
farming.
far deeper way of farming, enriching the soil, protecting the soil, nurturing the soil,
Absolutely.
and the surrounding community as a result.
You'll read some of the articles in which a vineyard manager or a winemaker will describe their ultimate vineyard, and it will be a vineyard that is alive, not only with growing vines, but with animals and with insects and with other colors, because there are other different types of blooming flowers, for
Right,
instance,
right.
that insects will go to instead of if they have a choice of that flower or the vine,
Right.
they'll go to that flower. So that flower, marigolds are used very often in vineyards, and so they'll go to those flowers, so they will plant those around the vineyards or even in the rows. If you driving through, Napa or Sonoma or France or, Germany or any vineyards, and you see vineyards where there is a great deal of life. You see a lot of other green underneath the vineyard. You see a lot of animal life. You know that vineyard is a sustainable vineyard. If you go through a vineyard that is being grown with a lot of pesticides and a lot of chemicals, literally all you see is the vines. That very trim, very precise, pristine look that you will see is not natural, and it does not produce the best grapes.
Actually,
That's the most important thing.
I've heard that picturesque vineyard that you see is actually because of over-tillage of the land, which led to the Dust Bowl in the 1930s, which was not a good thing.
Right.
So
Right.
what you're talking about is really being in touch with the earth and with the soil. I know that some of this is being done in California and Oregon and other places. Tell me where else sustainable farming is going on. And
Well,
what it's
probably
like.
sustainable farming went on for many, many years, had a smaller window when it was not practiced as diligently, and it's certainly come back much more quickly in the European vineyards. It has been going on in New Zealand and Australia as well, and continues to. In the European vineyards, there was a period of time when increased production was the word of the day, and so people began to try and do that, which means manipulation that is not necessarily in tune with nature. They quickly learned that was not the way that they were going to make the best wine. And another thing that kept it alive in Europe is many vineyards in Europe are family owned and operated and have been for years. So what they do is they pay attention to their land. They grow the amount of grape and the type of grape that their land tells them to grow in any given vintage. And that is what they produce, and that is what they sell, and that is what they live on. It's, you know, sort of a living in balance as well. They don't decide that their expenditures in life are going to be this, and now they need to produce enough money to support that lifestyle. They determine whatever a particular vintage is going to produce for them, and that's what they live on in that given year. So it is really an even larger sort of imbalance.
So it brings in the
nature.
principles of living simply as well as living
Absolutely.
for the ecological health.
Absolutely. Although I will tell you, I've been to many of those smaller vineyards, and simply but wonderfully, those people appreciate the things.
They've got good wine.
They have great wine. They have great food that's, you know, right there, very local cuisine, and they stop to enjoy both of them throughout the day. So while we may say it's a much more simpler life in our country, they consider that to be the very best of life. So they really enjoy that process that they're involved in.
And there is such a connection with the growth there of vineyards and the food produced in those agricultural regions.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely. And again, as we said, it's about growing the best possible grape. And I think that some of the winemakers that are doing this in Oregon and in California are doing this initially as much about the grape and the wine that it's ultimately going to produce, which is completely in balance with doing sustainable agriculture. I mean, there was a period of time in which organic wine kind of got a bad name in the United States because
it wasn't supposed to taste good.
Exactly. In the late 70s and the early 80s, people that grew or what could be labeled organic wine were again doing it in a market-driven fashion.
Right.
They weren't necessarily really figuring out what should this soil be like in this locale. They were just growing without chemicals and pesticides and producing a wine. And the wine wasn't terribly good.
Right.
And so organic wines got kind of a bad reputation. When in actuality, if you take it that step further and you're doing sustainable farming, which is all about the land, it's all about making the land and the dirt and the soil here the best it can possibly be for this location, then you're producing the best possible grapes, which are producing the best possible wine. And so winemakers that are making some of the finest wines out of California and Oregon are using the sustainable farming or even biodynamic agriculture, which is even, you know, deeper to the nth degree, and producing some of the best wines in this country because they're playing with the soil as opposed to against the soil.
You
and they're
love
making
wine.
I do. I absolutely do. I love wine. I love good wine.
Yes,
okay, I love
good wine. Good wine.
I love good
So
wine.
how do you? I know you run this restaurant in a way that really nourishes the wine drinkers. So what is it you do here to help?
Well, first and foremost, we're trying to pay attention to who is growing and producing wine in a sustainable fashion, both for those same two reasons, as that it's good for the earth overall. You know, I think it's good for our economy, it's good for our souls, it's good for us ecologically, so we're trying to pay attention to that. And we're trying to honor those winemakers that are doing the right thing in that way. Again, those winemakers are making some of the best wine, so we're also trying to pick those wines that taste the best. I mean, we don't sell anything we don't love.
Are those large distributors, small?
In terms of a distributor fashion, winemaker goes to supplier, goes to distributor.
Okay.
We purchase from almost all of our wines from a distributor that takes this wine thing very seriously and in a very fun fashion at the same time, and that they really care about the quality of the wine. They care about the people that make their wines. They know most of the people that make their wines, and so they are smaller winemakers. They're a smaller distributor, so they can handle those people. They can have a relationship with their suppliers. And they take really good care of their wine once they get it. They pick up from the winery. It always stays in refrigeration. It stays
That's what intrigued me, that what do they drive, refrigerated
They drive
trucks?
refrigerated trucks. They use air-conditioned storage.
Wow, I know
It
that
comes
makes a
to us
difference.
cold. It makes a huge difference because the integrity of wine is either kept or destroyed by heat. And if you're living in Florida, you're dealing with heat. So it's important. That's important. So we pick the right winemaker, we pick the right distributor, and then we take care of it once we get it.
Okay, so do you get lots of people asking for these kinds of wines?
Not anywhere near as many as I would like.
So how can we increase that?
I think that we need to talk to people about asking about that from both the retailer and the restaurateur. You need to say, do you have anything from a sustainable winery?
So that's what we're doing today.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you,
That's
Mary
very
Ann.
good. Thank you.
We had two really good lines that we wanted to use and we didn't get to use them, so I'm going to say them now. That sustainable farming is dependent on two things, and that is that the microorganisms are the chefs of the soil, and that the soil is the bloodline of a vineyard.
A study on persistent activism on pacifists from World War II over a period of 50 years showed that what kept them together were two factors: a larger vision and a connection with like-minded people. That's what keeps social movements going. And we have that larger vision in the Earth Charter that shows us the interdependence of all life. And so it is our duty and our role to bring the connections of like-minded people together. I'm not talking about meetings. You don't have to do meetings. You can do conversational parties, you can do discussion groups in your homes. What it means is that you break bread together. That's an important ingredient. I just happen to like cheese with my bread and wine with my cheese, so I do all of those. Some people might like tofu and orange juice. It doesn't matter. Bring people together, inspire them with the Earth Charter, and let them do their own thing. They may come back together to form a cohesive action group to make something happen in your community, but they may also just go off and do something on their own to make the Earth Charter real. So you do your part and keep watching our show, and we'll show you other things to do. And I want to close with a toast to the Earth Charter. So you guys ready?
We are.
To the Earth Charter, to making the Earth Charter a reality.
Cheers.
Cheers.